Ahoy! The question that I probably get asked the most lately is which items can go to 725 gear score, which can go to 700, and which are generally useful or worth keeping. And I want to help you out with that, because New World doesn't really give you much information about that at all. So we have my very cluttered inventory here after a quick merc run, and we're gonna sort things a little bit and go through what our options are. And in order to do that, to make it easier for yourself, you can sort by gear score, which will filter out a lot of the mess immediately. So we can, for example, see we have some very low gear score stuff here that is not going to be helpful in any regard, because this is not named, this doesn't have anything special about it, so this would immediately go in the trash. Then we have some legendary items that otherwise seem to fall in a similar category because they aren't upgradable, they don't have a named special effect, they're not glowing anything. So you can expect that under normal circumstances, these items will stay at exactly this gear score that you get them at. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. If you get good 3 perkers and they're not 700 gear score, they can still be better than a 700 gear score weapon with bad perks, for example. So not all of these items are immediately useless. They're still legendary items with 3 perks, so consider which ones can be useful for you if the perks are appealing. Next, we have the 625 legendary named items. These ones are, unfortunately, for the most part, trash these days. They actually used to be the best items in the game, or some of them used to be, but nowadays they are relatively outdated for the most part and don't really have much of a purpose anymore, since they're not going to 700 gear score. However, if you're looking to use them in Outpost Rush or in arenas, then keep in mind that for those modes, they will be upscaled to 700 gear score. So if you find a 625 with a combination of perks that you really like for example, something like one of the old swords that used to have illegal perk combinations, then you could keep that and use that in OPR specifically or in Arena specifically, where it will get upscaled. Some of these named items no longer seem to exist in the world or drop from the mobs that they used to drop from. I can't really tell what's going on there. I tend to find them mostly in Merkgard nowadays. For some reason there's more there. But again, there are exceptions, generally not very useful, definitely not upgradable, but maybe upscalable for OPR. Next, we have the normal purple items with the special glowing effect, the normal named items. These are your first interesting option, I would say, in general, because they go to 700 gear score. So we can look at anyone here, we'll look at anything here. We can look at Demon Thigh, for example. If we go to the Gypsum Kiln here, we go to the upgrades and look what we have here, and we can find Demon Thigh here. In this case, the upgrade goes to 700 gear score, not to 725. This is important to keep in mind, and we need quite a few resources to upgrade that. Because it only goes to 700 gear score, some people will not like these items. However, some of these items can still be extremely good, because you have 2 locked perks and you can choose the 3rd one, which in some cases is just extremely effective and useful. So take, for example, protection amulets. Protection perks are pretty much always needed when it comes to expedition runs in higher stages and mutation levels, because you're gonna get so much elemental damage, or you also need it for the new raid and so on. In those cases, you can upgrade, for example, a piece that has protection and empowered. You could just put health on this or whatever else you want, and you can get that at 700, and it will probably be the most effective piece you can get for a very, very, very long time, unless you're extremely lucky with any of the new jewelry pieces that you could get from the raid. But many people aren't even doing the raid, so this will definitely be useful also for PvP, for example, if you're trying to survive against fire mages, or you can get similar things for slash damage and so on. So yeah, these named items, while only going to 700, definitely still useful. If you find this info so far useful, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell to get notified of other upcoming videos. Now we're getting into the somewhat higher tier territory. Aside of the normal named items, you also have artifacts. And artifacts, 700 gear score from the start, get an additional upgrade. So they actually have 2 separate upgrades now, which you can both see here in the Gypsum Kiln. The first version is the 700 gear score upgrade that only allows you to add a 3rd locked perk, so you can choose the perk for yourself and that's also finishing the quest for you. Don't do this. Pretty much ever. Unless you really want to never ever ever walk into the PvP zone and never ever ever do the raid, because you have other options, and those are in the new upgrade, which is to 725 gear score. And in order to do this upgrade, you basically need the same resources, if you can compare here, plus you need either the Gorgonite Inductor from the raid or the Gold Cursed Coconut from the PvP zone. So obviously it's going to take a while to upgrade all the artifacts, but considering how expensive upgrades are at the moment with matrices, I don't think you want to do that twice. I don't think you really want to use 2 matrices on that, because you're going to have to use all these resources again just to get the item to 725. And that is your first accessible option to get items to 725 gear score. Your second option are items from the raid. The raid, the new Medusa raid, as well as also the Gentleman raid, can give you gear that is above 700 gear score. On one hand, this can just be random rolls like this one. This one is, for example, not quite 725. And if it's one of these, that's not a named item, but rather just a normal legendary, you don't have any option to upgrade that. That's just as it comes, pretty much. But there's also named gear from the raid with locked perks. That one is the Hoplite, for example, here. The Hoplite gear can be upgraded, or rather the perks can be changed if it's already at 725. In this case, I could take off Keen from this. You can see that the lock perks here are just Disdain, Infliction, and Killing Jacked, and I could change that to whatever perk I want to put on that instead, and it would still roll at 725. And that's also the case for the replicas. So if you're not getting a specific piece from the raid, you can get it through the Hive of the Gorgons token, so it would take you 4 weeks for a piece, and then you can just craft that piece outright. But then you may have to do the named crafting again after to roll the third perk that you like, because the third perk is random and you cannot put a craft mod into this. But if you're not raiding, there is still a pathway down to 725, and that is through the well in Cutlass Keys. Here, first of all, you have the named items that you can buy, the named weapons, which come at 710 gear score. But these are named items that can actually be further upgraded, again with a normal named upgrade recipe, and they go to 725 gear score and allow you to choose the third perk. And so far it's been found that penetrating the Empowered is not as bad as it was initially thought. As such, these may actually be decent pieces after all. But if you're not interested in these pieces at all, you don't just want to outright buy them with the Mystic Doubloons, there are other options. One is your daily crates. These ones, the Gold Cursed Epic Crate, can give you 725 gear, and I think these one can give you 705 or 710. I've seen both. I'm pretty sure it's 705. But either way, those are some pathways to get higher gear score as well. And similarly, you can also get the purple chests here with up to 710 gear score, or the legendary ones that actually give you guaranteed 725 gear score, but also require a Gold Cursed Doubloon. I want to show you some items here that I rolled with these caches, just to give you a bit of an understanding of what you can roll. Like this, for example, is something you could get out of these chests, because they're not guaranteed to be above 700 or anything. Many of the pieces that I've gotten are actually slightly below 700. And then I have pieces above 700, but they're also not automatically guaranteed to be 725. And last but not least, I got a 725 piece, and you want to be really, really aware of what happened to me here, so you don't repeat my mistake, because if you look at the perks here, this is an absolutely terrible life staff. So the gear that you're getting from these chests is loot biased towards what you're using. So I'm getting a lot of pieces with dexterity, as you can see, because I was wearing dex gear, I was wearing a rapier set. And I try to trick the system a little bit by taking off my offhand in order to just get rapiers if I get a weapon. Which I guess didn't really work as planned, because apparently if you take off your second weapon, it just gives you a chance to have no loot biasing at all, unless it was just random chance on the chest itself to not have loot biasing. But I'm assuming it rolled second hand, there was no item on the second hand, it didn't know what to give me, so it random rolled and I got a life staff, which I'm absolutely never going to use. So it is a pathway to 725, but don't try to play the system like I do. Now be aware that when it comes to named items, not every item that has a glowing effect can be updated. There are a lot of quest items that cannot get any upgrades. For example, things like this. Deckhand's promotion, extremely strong in PvP due to the Retaliate gem, but you can't actually upgrade it beyond 500 gear score. And there are also some weird outlier items that shouldn't really exist. Scorpion Stone is listed as a legendary named everywhere you look on New World Database or New World Body, but you can for some reason get it at above 625 gear score, above 600 gear score, which is supposedly the maximum that's indicated. And then it's a 2 perker with these perks, which is not terrible, I guess, if you want a Flame Protection Amulet. So, not sure what's going on there. Some of these items, especially in Murkard, just seem to be weird in some ways. And last but not least, I have an item that I can only show you on New World Database. That is the crafted Gorgon's gear, which comes from schematics, which you are supposed to get from the raid, but the schematics are so rare that you're never really gonna see any of them. You can see here, those roll at 725, and the schematics here are the Gorgonite schematics, but you need these Gorgonite ring schematics in order to get them, or whichever specific schematic you're after, and they just have such a low drop chance that you're very rarely going to see one that's going to sell for a lot of gold. So unless you're extremely lucky or extremely rich, you're probably never going to care about this particular recipe. And you're also going to need maxed out items, as far as I understand it, to actually craft this. I think this needs to be fully prismatic and everything. So yeah, it's not cheap either. Little addition here at the end, you can of course craft the Gorgon Essence as well with the raid materials. If you've done the raid, this requires the Gorgon's Eye as well as your Inductor. And that can be used in recipes as well that allow you to craft 725 gear score with 3 craft mods, so actually allowing you to choose your own perks, but the material costs here are absolutely insane. And again, you need to clear the raid in order to be able to use this, since the Gorgonite Inductor only comes from the last boss after clearing the entire raid. I hope this makes the mess of gearing and understanding what gear can be upgraded a little bit less confusing. We are going to go into more detail about what to do at max level and how to best progress towards these items in a video tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. If you'd like to support me further and get early trading tips in return, feel free to do so on my Patreon. Thanks to all my patrons who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.